Rama joking. I'm just like cheating.
I read the newspaper.
Oh, you do? Wonderful. Oh, let's take pictures and put it on our WhatsApp.
We just make global news. It's in the Honolulu newspaper this morning.
Yay!
On the
Awesome.
cover.
Jai Jagannath.
They said, oh, you are the Gujarat? Oh.
Wait for my turn.
Krishna's not on plane, he's blocking his face.
Oh, no, I'm gonna start. Well, I'm.
It's in the front page?
No, I'm blowing it up a little bit. Global news.
Front.
Read all about it.
Is it my turn?
Yes.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Well, of course, Lord Jagannath's big news.
Yes.
He's the Lord of the universe, right? So today, we'll take a look at Canto 3, Chapter 15, texts 20 and 21. But I also want to go back and look at 19, because, well, there's a few of us in this room who will find it particularly encouraging. So, text 20. Yat
Yes.
Sankulam
Sankulam
Hari
Hari
Padanati
Adanati
Matra
Matra
Drishtai
Drishtar
Yat Sankulam Hari Padanti Matra. Okay, I had it. Yeah. Yat Sankulam Hari Padanati Matra Drishtai
Yat Sankulam Hari Padanati Matra Drishtar
Vaidurya
Raturya
Marakata
Marakata
Hema
Ema
Mayai
Mayar
Vimanahi
Vimanahi
Vaidurya Marakata Hema Mayar Vimanahi
Vaidurya Marakata Ema Mayar Vimanahi
Yesham
Yesham
Brihat
Brihat
Kati
Kati
Tata
Tataha
Smita
Smita
Shobhi
Shobhi
Mukyaha
Mukyaha
Yesham Brihat Kati Tata Smita Shobhi Mukya
Yesham Brihakati Tata Smita Shobhi Mukya
Krishnatmanam
Krishnatmanam
Na
Na
Raja
Raja
Adadhur
Adur
Utsmayadyai
Utsmayayadai
Krishnatmanam Naraja Adadhur Utsmayadyai
Krishnatmanam Na Raja Adur Utsmayadai
Yat Sankulam Haripadanati Matra Drishtai
Yat Sankulam Hari Padanati Matra Drishtar
Vaidurya Marakata Hema Mayar Vimanahi
Vaidurya Marakata Hema Mayar Vimanai
Yesham Brehat Kati Tata Smita Shobhi Mukya
Yesham Brihakati Tata Smita Shobhi Mukya
Krishnatmanam Naraja Adadurutsyamaya Utsmayadyai
Krishna Yatmana Naraja Adur Adadur Utsmayayadai
I know.
Mayadai
Caught me. Yat Sankulam Haripadanati Matra Drishtai
Yat Sankulam Hari Padanati Matra Drishtar
Vaidurya Marakata Hema Mayar Vimanahi
Vaidurya Marakata Yamamayor Vimanai.
Yesham Brihat Katitata Smita Shobhimukyaha.
Tesham Katitata Shobhimukya.
Krishnatmanam Naraja Adarar Utsmayadyahi.
Krishnatmanam Naraja Adarar Utsmayadyahi. You're
Others?
fast. Yatsanukalam Haripadanati Matrardrishtair.
Yatsanukulam Haripadanati Matradrishtair.
Vaidurya Marakata Hemamaya Vimanai.
Vaidurya Marakata Hemamaya Vimanai.
Yesham Brihat Kati Tata Smita Shobhi Mukya. Krishnatmanam Naraja Adadur Utsmayadhyai.
Krishnatmanam Naraja Adadur Utsmayadhyai.
Yatsakulam Haripadanati Matradrishtir.
Yatsakulam Haripadanati Matradrishtir.
Vaidurya Barakata Himamayar Imanai.
Vaidurya Marakata Himamayar Imanai.
Isham Brakati Tatasmita Sovimukya.
Yesham Brihakati Tata Smita Shobhi Mukya.
Krishnatmanam Naraja Adadur Utsmayadhyai.
Krishnatmanam Naraja Adadur Utsmayadhyai.
Yatsankulam Haripadanati Matradrishtir.
Yatsankulam Haripadanati Matradrishtir.
Vaidurya Marakata Hemamaya Vimainaha.
Vaidurya Marakata Hemamaya Vimanai.
Yesham Viharkati Tatashmita Shobhimukyaha.
Yesham Brihakati Tata Smita Shobhi Mukya.
Krishna Manam Naraja Aduru Utsmayadya.
Krishnatmanam Naraja Adur Utsmayadhyai.
No other takers?
Yatsankulam Haripadanati Matradrishtir.
Yatsankulam Haripadanati Matradrishtir.
Vaidurya Marakata Hemamayar Vimanai.
Vaidurya Marakata Hemamaya Vimanai.
Sambrihat Katitata Smiti Sobhimukya.
Yesham Brihakati Tata Smita Shobhi Mukya.
Natmanam Naraja Adadur Utsmayadhyai.
Krishnatmanam Naraja Adadur Utsmayadhyai.
Synonyms. Yet,
Yat,
that Vaikuntha abode,
that Vaikuntha abode,
Samkulam
Samkulam
is pervaded,
is pervaded,
Haripada,
Haripada,
at the two lotus feet of Hari,
at the two lotus feet of Hari,
the Supreme Personality of Godhead,
the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Anati,
Anati,
by obeisances, Matra,
Matra,
simply, Drishtai, are obtained, Vaidurya, Lapis Lazuli,
Lapis Lazuli,
Marakata,
Marakata,
emeralds,
emeralds,
Hema,
Hema,
gold,
gold,
Mayai,
Mayai,
made of,
made of,
Vimanai,
Vimanai,
with airplanes,
with airplanes,
Yesham,
Yesham,
of those passengers,
of those passengers,
Brihat,
Brihat,
large,
large,
Kotitata,
Katitata,
hips,
hips,
Smita,
Smita,
smiling,
smiling,
Shobhi,
Shobhi,
beautiful.
beautiful.
Mukyaha,
Mukyaha,
faces.
faces.
Krishna,
Krishna,
in Krishna.
in Krishna.
Atmanam,
Atmanam,
whose minds are absorbed.
whose minds are absorbed.
Na,
Na,
not.
not.
Rajaha,
Rajaha,
sex desire.
sex desire.
Adadahu,
Adadu,
stimulate.
stimulate.
Utsmaya adyahai,
Usmayadhyai,
by intimate friendly dealings,
by intimate friendly dealings,
laughing and joking.
laughing and joking.
Translation. The inhabitants of Vaikuntha travel in their airplanes made of lapis lazuli, emerald, and gold. Though crowded by their consorts who have large hips and beautiful smiling faces, they cannot be stimulated to passion by their mirth and beautiful charms. Responsively, please. The inhabitants of Vaikuntha
The inhabitants of Vaikuntha
travel in their airplanes
travel in their airplanes
made of lapis lazuli,
made of lapis lazuli,
emerald, and gold.
emerald, and gold.
Although crowded by their consorts,
Although crowded by their consorts,
who have large hips
who have large hips
and beautiful smiling faces,
and beautiful smiling faces,
they cannot be stimulated to passion
they cannot be stimulated to passion
by their mirth and beautiful charms.
by their mirth and beautiful charms.
Srila Prabhupada's purport. In the material world, opulences are achieved by materialistic persons by dint of their labor, or someone else's labor. I mean, let's be honest. One cannot enjoy prosperity unless he works very hard to achieve it. But the devotees of the Lord, who are residents of Vaikuntha, have the opportunity to enjoy a transcendental situation of jewels and emeralds. Ornaments made of gold, bedecked with jewels, are achieved not by working hard, but by the benediction of the Lord. In other words, devotees in the Vaikuntha world, or even in this material world, cannot be poverty-stricken, as is sometimes supposed. They have ample opulences for enjoyment, but they need not labor to achieve them. It is also stated that in the Vaikuntha world, the consorts of the residents are many, many times more beautiful than we find in this material world, even in the higher planets. It is specifically mentioned here that a woman's large hips are very attractive and they stimulate man's passion. But the wonderful feature of Vaikuntha is that although the women have large hips and beautiful faces and are decorated with ornaments of emeralds and jewels, the men are so absorbed in Krishna consciousness that the beautiful bodies of the women cannot attract them. In other words, there is enjoyment of the association of the opposite sex, but there's no sexual relationship. The residents of Vaikuntha have a better standard of pleasure, so there's no need of sex pleasure. And text 21. Shri Rupani Kvanayati Charanarvindam Leelam Bhujena Harisan Sadmani Mukta Dosha Sanlakshyate Spatikakudya Upeta Himni Samarjativa Yadu Anugrahane Nyayatnaha. The ladies in the Vaikuntha planets are as beautiful as the goddess of fortune herself. Such transcendently beautiful ladies, their hands playing with lotuses and their leg bangles tinkling, are sometimes seen sweeping the marble walls, which are bedecked at intervals with golden borders, in order to receive the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Srila Prabhupada's report. In the Brahma Samhita, it is stated that the Supreme Lord Govinda is always served in his abode by many, many millions of goddesses of fortune. Lakshmi Sahasra Shata Sambrahma Sevyamana. These millions and trillions of goddesses of fortune who reside in the Vaikuntha planets are not exactly consorts of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but are the wives of the devotees of the Lord and also engage in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is stated here that in the Vaikuntha planets, the houses are made of marble. Similarly, in the Brahma Samhita, it is stated that the ground on the Vaikuntha planets is made of touchstone. Thus, there's no need to sweep the stone in Vaikuntha, for there is hardly dust on it. But still, in order to satisfy the Lord, the ladies there are always engaged in dusting the marble walls. Why? The reason is that they are eager to achieve the grace of the Lord by doing so. It is also stated that in the Vaikuntha planets, the goddesses of fortune are faultless. Generally, the goddess of fortune does not remain steadily in one place. Her name is Chanchala, which means one who is not steady. We see this especially in our material dealings. We think of, in the West, especially in America, our sense of the goddess of fortune is Lady Luck, right? Luck be a lady to, was it Luck be a lady tonight? Is that a Sinatra song or something? Probably. And so the idea is that you have to be really, smart or fortunate to catch Lady Luck, to catch this fortune, because her attention is flickering. So she's chanchala, not steady. We find, therefore, that a man who's very rich may become the poorest of the poor. Another example is Ravana. Ravana took away Lakshmi, Sitaji, to his kingdom. And instead of being happy by the grace of Lakshmi, his family and his kingdom were vanquished. Thus, Lakshmi in the house of Ravana is chanchala, or unsteady. So materialistic people can't count on good fortune. Devotees can always count on good fortune. Prabhupada says in the previous purport, they're never poverty-stricken, I think is the phrase he used. They never feel themselves poverty-stricken. Why? Because they're satisfied with what they have. I'll come back to that in a couple minutes. Men of Ravana's class want Lakshmi only, without her husband, Narayan. Therefore, they become unsteady due to Lakshmiji. Materialistic persons find fault on the part of Lakshmi, but in Vaikuntha, Lakshmiji is fixed in the service of the Lord. In spite of her being the goddess of fortune, she cannot be happy without the grace of the Lord. Even the goddess of fortune needs the Lord's grace in order to be happy. Yet, in the material world, even Brahma, the highest created being, seeks the favor of Lakshmi for happiness. Om Ajnanatimidandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langhayate Girim Jatkripatamaham Bande Shri Gurun Dinataranam Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupagadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Pancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindho vyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namaha. Yat sankulam hari padanati namatara drashtayar vayadurya marakata hema mayar himanai yesham brihat katitata smita shobhi mukya krishnat manam naraja adadhuru smayadyahi. The inhabitants of Vaikuntha travel in their airplanes made of lapis lazuli, emerald, and gold. Although crowded by their consorts who have large hips and beautiful smiling faces, they cannot be stimulated to passion by their mirth and beautiful charms. Shri Rupani Kvanayati Charanara Vindam Lilam Bhujena Harisam Sadmani Mukta Dosha Samlakshyate Spatikakudi Upeta Inni Samarjativa Yaranugrahane Nyayatnaha. The ladies in the Vaikuntha planets are beautiful as the goddess of fortune herself. Such transcendentally beautiful ladies, their hands playing with lotuses and their leg bangles tinkling, are sometimes seen sweeping the marble walls, which are bedecked at intervals with golden borders, in order to achieve the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So here we get a look a bit of a look at the character of the residents of Vaikuntha. But before I discuss that, I do want to go back to text 19 because it's just cool. I'm not going to read the text, I'll just read the Sanskrit and Srila Prabhupada's purport and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's Tika, his commentary as well, because, well, you'll see why, because you know a couple of us here. Although flowering plants like the Mandara, Kunda, Kudabaka, Utpala, Champaka, Arna, Punnaga, Nagakeshara, Bakula, Lily, and Parijata are full of transcendental fragrance, they are still conscious of the austerities performed by Tulasi. For Tulasi is given special preference by the Lord, who garlands himself with Tulasi leaves. Srila Prabhupada says, the importance of Tulasi leaves is very clearly mentioned here. Tulasi plants and their leaves are very important in devotional service. Devotees are recommended to water the Tulasi tree every day and collect the leaves to worship the Lord. One time an atheistic Swami remarked, what is the use of watering the Tulasi plant? It is better to water eggplant. By watering eggplant, one can get some fruits. It's the use of watering the Tulasi. These foolish creatures, unacquainted with devotional service, sometimes play havoc with the education of people in general. The most important thing about the spiritual world is that there is no envy among the devotees there. This is true even among the flowers, which are all conscious of the greatness of Tulasi. In the Vaikuntha world, entered by the four Kumaras, even the birds and flowers are conscious of service to the Lord. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes, like the birds, the trees are the greatest devotees, devoid of envy and hatred. Naga means the Naga Keshara tree. These trees have flowers with the sweetest perfume. But when they smell the fragrance of Tulsi, when the Lord performs pastimes in the forest with Tulsi ornaments, they offer respect to Tulsi for her austerities to achieve that position. For they have not done such austerities. You are so fortunate. If we know what austerities we did, then we would go to the land of Bharata and do the same. This is the hint from the description. Even the inhabitants of Vaikuntha desire to take birth in Bharat. It is hinted that the land of Bharat is superior to Vaikuntha. The trees respect Tulsi and do not envy her. Because she has a pure heart, Sumanasaha, or Sumanasaha can mean flowering trees. Mention here is made of persons in airplanes, born from wombs, the birds born from eggs, and the trees born from seeds. The fourth type of living beings born from perspiration do not worship the Lord, since they're not described here. That reminds me of a program Srila Prabhupada did in 1972 at the Church of the Crossroads. There was this very interesting older lady who was still at the time, but had been even previously to his joining Iskcon, a follower of Siddha Swarupananda's. And she was Chai. She was Chai. Chai. Not Chai Devi, but Chai. You remember Chai? Oh. I don't know how, she's hard to forget. She was a little eccentric, sometimes more than a little eccentric. And this program was a large program at the Church of the Crossroads. We probably had about 300, 350 people there. And Srila Prabhupada wanted to talk about yoga and bhakti yoga. He wanted to talk about the yoga system. So I think, if I remember correctly, he spoke from the 6th chapter largely of Bhagavad Gita. And at the end of the talk, Srila Prabhupada asked for questions. And this fellow who came with Chai was even more interesting than she was, or perhaps he was intoxicated or something, we're not sure. But all of a sudden, Srila Prabhupada paused for questions, and he barked out, Paramahansa Yogananda! And you could hear every devotee's heart beating in that room. It all of a sudden got so quiet. Paramahansa Yogananda! Why didn't Krishna say anything about him in the Bhagavad Gita? And then Chai started babbling. He's just a child of God, just like you are. Blah, blah, blah. And Siddha Swarupananda, sitting at Srila Prabhupada's feet, through his teeth said, Chai, be quiet. And she stopped. There's a long pause, very pregnant pause. And Srila Prabhupada said, what can I say? If Krishna doesn't mention him in the Bhagavad Gita, then what is there for me to say? And then he went on with it. So sweet. He shamed the guy without trying to shame him. It was so wonderful, so sweet. So this is a characteristic of the spiritual world, of the Vaikuntha Lokas, the place where there is no anxiety. Why is there no anxiety? Because there's no personal ambition. It's not about me. Everything's about Krishna and Krishna Tadiya, Krishna's servants, those things that are connected with Krishna. Just as Lord Shiva says to Parvati, Aradhana, when she asks what's the highest form of worship, he says, Aradhananam sarvesham Vishnu Aradhanam palam. Oh, because she's thinking, I'm worshiping my husband, and he's this very elevated personality. So I'm asking him, what's the highest form of worship? And he says, the highest form of worship is worship of Lord Vishnu. Vishnu Aradhanam param. It's above all others. Well, okay. But then he says, Tasmat parataram devi tadyanam samarchana. However, even better than that is worshiping those things in connection with Krishna. And when Srila Prabhupada cited this, he almost always said, worshipping Krishna's devotees, worshipping Tulasi. So this is the attitude of Vaikuntha. There is no, as we saw in the first of today's purports, no passion. Even though the husbands in Vaikuntha, they ride around in their lapis lazuli, emerald and gold airplanes with their beautiful wives, cozy, because they have wide hips. So they're sitting close together, and the wives are beautiful, and they have great senses of humor, and there's lots of joking and laughter. It's very sweet, very lighthearted. But still, the men aren't the men devotees. It's not about them. They're not there to enjoy their wives. They're there to serve their wives. And the wives are there to serve their husbands. And they're both there to serve Krishna. This is Vaikuntha life. And serve how? Even the most menial of tasks, dusting the walls. Although Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, it's not like they actually had brooms. It may seem like they've had brooms, but they had lotus flowers in their hands. They're goddesses of fortune, for goodness sake. The original princesses, right? They're the real thing. But they're all about serving Krishna. It's not about me. I'm not, we're not here. Oh, I saw a really funny meme that I shared with some devotees the other day. Who was it? My friend Thomas Haribol, who we were hoping we'd be able to visit this month, but it just doesn't seem to have worked out. He's this really interesting guy. He grew up Mormon, converted to Catholicism, and became for many years kind of a lay Franciscan teacher. Really, really cool guy. Really someone who aspires to actual mystic life. And he found it for some time in the Franciscan approach to Roman Catholicism until he encountered Krishna consciousness. Now, he didn't completely give up the other thing. He gave actually a wonderful lecture, which I haven't had a chance to hear, a couple of years ago here at Urmila's invitation, about some parallels between Marianism in Roman Catholicism and the Gaudiya Vaishnava's worship of Radha. Really, really interesting guy. Really, really wonderful devotee. Goes to sadhu sangha. You'll see him at kirtans sometimes, but mostly he'll be in the kitchen, downstairs in the kitchen, cutting up and serving. You don't get to hang out with him at lunch because he's busy serving lunch. He doesn't have to. Better than that, he serves the devotees in other ways. I think 2 years in a row he paid my fees. And then when they reimbursed me, he said, no, that check's made out to you. I tried to give him the check, and he says, no, that check's made out to you. Really, really wonderful guy. So he posted this thing the other day, and it was a knife, a fork, and a spoon in a little bag, like at a restaurant or something like that. And on the bag it says, "We are here to serve." And I just thought, bingo! That's our life. That's our life. That's Vaikuntha life. And if we see the holy Dham, where we've been given the great fortune of residing, as the same as that Vaikuntha, what's the problem with dusting the walls, with sweeping the floor, with cleaning the bathroom, or any slice of sushi? Because in Vaikuntha, even Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune on each of the Vaikuntha planets, as well as all the other Lakshmis, they're all about serving the Lord. They're all about serving the Lord. Whatever there is to do, even if it's not really there to do, because Vishwanath points out there's not really any dust on the walls in Vaikuntha. They're these beautiful jeweled walls. And then Srila Prabhupada, now a couple of interesting things about text 20. In text 20 says, is it 20? Okay. Krishnatmanam. It's not like Vishnu Atmanam or anything like that. Krishnatmanam. Their souls are all about Krishna. Oh, there's another thing I liked in here. When they're talking about the Vaikuntha airplanes, Vaidurya Marakata Hema Mayai. So they're Mayai. They're made of these things. Mayai. This should be a very familiar word, because this is a name for Radharani that I bring up quite often for a number of reasons, because it's just a powerful name for Radharani. Krishna Mayi means she's made of Krishna. She sees Krishna everywhere. You read this in the 4th chapter of Adi Leela, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. She sees Krishna everywhere and in everything. That's Radha. Krishna Prema Mayi Radha, Radha Prema Maya Hari. And Krishna, Hari, is made up of love for Radha. This is Jiva Goswami singing, glorifying the divine couple. Krishna, he starts his Yugalashtakam with this. Krishna Prema Mayi Radha, Radha Prema Maya Hari. Radha is completely composed of love for Krishna. That's her substance. And Krishna, what is his substance? What's he all about? What is he made of? Love for Radha. And everybody in Vrindavan is all about Radha and Krishna. Even the sentiments that superficially would conflict with each other, like parental love and conjugal love, you don't have those in the same person. But in the context of the village of Vrindavan, they work amazingly. Because how does it happen? Mother Yashoda wants Krishna to go to bed early and get a good night's rest so he grows up big and strong, so that he can protect the cows and all the residents of Vrindavan. And what does Radha want and all the other cowherd girls from Vrindavan? They want him as soon as that latch closes on the door and Mother Yashoda starts walking down the hall. They want him to sneak out the window and come out and play with them all night long, especially on the full moon. In that way, these enhance each other. And then in the morning, when he's like got kumkum all over him and little scratches and dust and stuff, Mother Yashoda, wait a minute. I gave you a bath last night. What's the deal here? So all these things, they work together to create this wonderful, sweet atmosphere. We were talking the other day. Vaikuntha, Aishwarya. The mood there is Aishwarya. He is the Supreme Lord. So which is one reason I find this word Krishnatmanam quite interesting in this verse. Vrindavan, Madhurya. It's all sweetness. There's no sense of Krishna's godhood. No room for that. It just gets in the way of everybody's, of the way everyone is made to love Krishna. So, anyway, a little glimpse, I think, at the character of Vaikuntha. We see that its physical features, but the character, it's all about love and cooperation. Everything is focused on Krishna, helping everybody else serve Krishna. And that's the kind of atmosphere Srila Prabhupada wants us to try to create at his centers as well. Every Krishna conscious center, whether it's Iskcon or not, and even our homes should be like that. There shouldn't be competition between husband and wife, big brother and little sister, or anything like that. It should all be love. I remember, I think my daughters were young adults, maybe around 20 or something like that, when one of those refrigerator magnets showed up on the refrigerator in our apartment. Sisters by chance, friends by choice. And I just thought, somebody did something right here. And they still are. They're in their 40s and they're still friends. So this should be our mood in the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. This is what's going to attract people to Bhakti Yoga. When they see the dealings among the devotees, all based on love and service, and who can't be affected? Who can help but be affected by that? The other stuff may attract some people for some time. It's like we used to see back in the late 70s, early 80s, some of the leaders of Iskcon used to like to sport the most expensive silks and watches that cost more than any car I've ever owned. Maybe than any car I've ever driven, and I have friends with nice cars. But thinking that would attract people to Krishna consciousness. But what attracts people to Krishna consciousness is our consciousness, is that Vaikuntha consciousness, that anxiety-free consciousness, because it's not about me. I don't see myself as the center of the universe. I see myself as a satellite orbiting around the other satellites that are orbiting around other satellites, dasa, dasa, anudasa, that orbit around Krishna. And that's what we want. One devotee said, the fifth position. We want to be the servant of the servants, of the servants, of the servants, of the servants of Krishna. We want to be in that fifth position in life. It's the best place in life. First in line, we like it, but it's not really the best place. That's what's going to attract people, that Vaikuntha consciousness. And when they see how we love each other, not just despite those differences, not despite the quirks, but because of them. When there's love, faults become ornaments. We see that in Vrindavan. That's what we see in Vrindavan. Krishna's fault, lampata. Oh, the guy is a rogue. But I'm his anyway. Whatever. Right? And that makes it all the sweeter. So, Radharani, she gets a little petulant and, huffy. Perfect. That makes Krishna start to quiver and lean into Subal. Oh my God, look at the look on her face. I think I'm dead. And Subal's like, no, it's cool. You just have to, just have to grovel a little bit, a little bit will just nothing. So that's Vrindavan. It's all about Radha and Krishna, and there's also love among the devotees. There's a name for that, and it just, as Radhesha would say, ran away from me. But there is a name for that, love for a friend. That's all there. There's really no competition. Prabhupada said in his purport to the second verse of the Bhagavatam, a sentence that actually changed my life. Just right as I read it, I just thought, oh, this is something this is not even what I was thinking it was. This is something completely different. Because he's explaining that second verse, who's the proper audience for the Bhagavatam? Satam, nirmatsarama, satam. Why are they pure? There's no envy in their hearts. And why is there no envy? Because they're all about Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada writes that everybody's competing with everybody else to enjoy in this world. He says, but the devotees of the Lord aren't like that. Not only do they not compete with each other, but they strive to create a competition-less society with God at the center. By the time I got to the end of that sentence, I knew I was done. I knew I had found the revolution that we had been looking for all through the 60s. And it didn't start in the late 60s. It started in the early 60s. Civil rights movement, the anti-war movement, all these things, we were looking for a better way to live together. And when I read that sentence in that purport, I knew I had found it. And I was done. I was done. Still here, somehow, by the mercy of the devotees. Especially my sister and my lords, they dragged me back here. I seem unable to leave. I'll stop here. Any quick questions or comments?
A quick comment. A reporter asked Prabhupada, says, we understand that you're doing a lot of brainwashing within your movement, so how do you respond? Prabhupada says, if the brain is dirty, one must wash it. I thought that was the most clever saying, and it really good.
He was good.
I want to add something. I read recently in Krishna's book, the chapter of Krishna talks to Rukmini, when he wanted to tease her and made her mad by calling her princess and telling why she didn't marry all those princes who were more qualified than he is. And when he was addressing and saying that, looks like I don't have any particular aim in life, and I'm so poor, I don't even have my own kingdom or anything, and all my devotees are poor as well. And I was thinking about it, oh yeah, from a materialistic standpoint it is. And it was something still bothering me, like what attitude should we have towards wealth? And you mentioned that in the class as well, right? That our consciousness attracts versus the car. And then when Rukmini came back to her senses, she was able to answer to Krishna. She was replying to all those points which he made from the materialistic standpoint to actually explaining to us what it is, why it's this way, as he's Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And she said, yes, your devotees looks like they don't have any particular aim because no one can understand them. They're so elevated and they just don't have taste in anything material anymore. That they're not interested in wealth because they found something more superior. And I've heard it so many times, but I couldn't understand it because this controversy, like, oh, should we not even want any money? But it's the material world, that's the way us to operate here and take care of our bodies. But just the consciousness of how we look at that, we understand that it's just a tool to operate in this world, but not the desire, not the goal, because we found something to superior taste to that. So somehow the Rukmini is talking to Krishna that way, gave me that realization. And you've mentioned that.
Yeah, Srila Prabhupada mentioned that too in his purport. That love.
All we need is
love.
Da, 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 da. All we need is love. And if we have love, when there is love, the other stuff comes and goes. We're satisfied. I heard a quick podcast by this Lutheran minister, Nadia Bolz-Weber, whom I admire for many things. She has some wonderful insights in what it means to be human, what it means to be Christian. And she'll tell you, first thing she'll tell you, she's a very flawed person. The first book that she wrote begins with an expletive that I can't or won't say on this property. I could say it, but I So she admits that she's a very flawed woman, addict and a recovering addict, and so many things. But she had this nice insight. It was called "Can't Get No." It's Reflections on Satisfaction. And there's a verse from the New Testament where Jesus is telling